Good afternoon and welcome to the September 29, 2021 Special Blue Ribbon Pension Review Committee meeting. To help slow the transmission of COVID-19 and protect the health and safety of the community, City Council, as well as board and commission meetings, will continue to be closed to the public for in-person attendance. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes to practice social distancing. Meetings are broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. Public comments on a specific agenda item will be taken when the agenda item is discussed. So I'm going to conduct roll call, starting with committee member Amirian.
Present.
Bain. Committee member Bain. Mike
Present.
Bain.
I'm here.
Committee member Roland Kadekin.
Here.
Committee member Alex Knights.
Present.
Committee member Alan Manning.
Here.
Committee member David Macias. Committee member David Macias.
I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. Committee member Grant Michaels.
Present.
Committee member Herbert Milano.
I'm here.
Thank you. Committee member Laura Nelson.
I'm here.
Committee member Susan Wilson. You're on mute, Susan.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Alison Finch.
I'm here.
Committee member Michael Wentz.
I'm here.
Committee member Chris Jernigan. Committee member Joseph Palace.
Here.
And IBEW representative who is not currently present. So moving on to regular business agenda, item 1. Item 1A, report of recorder regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for the September 29, 2021 special meeting of the Blue Ribbon Pension Review Committee was posted on September 28, 2021 on the bulletin board outside of City Hall. Item 2, introductions and presentations. Item 2A, member introductions.
John, we're going to turn this over to you at this point.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just step in for a sec. So my name is John Holtzman. I will be your facilitator when we go through the rules of procedure. I guess we'll decide exactly what my role will be, and we can talk about that. But in the interim, I thought what we should do is have go around the room and have everybody introduce themselves for roughly a minute, because we have a very packed agenda. Very short background and kind of statement of what your interest is in this area, and if possible, what you'd like to see us accomplish. All of that in a minute, so that's not really a challenge. So with that, I think maybe it's better if I go through just an order of the members that I can see on the screen. So, and I will introduce myself as well at the end of this. So Joe Palos, is that right?
Yes. Joseph Palos. I am representing the GCEA, Glendale City Employees Association. I am also the chair for the benefits committee for the Glendale City Employees Association, which is part the PERS, part health benefits, and I just go through and kind of get information for the association on what's going on with the child PERS, with the health negotiations and benefits, and so on. So I will be representing GCEA.
Thank you. Mike Wentz.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Wenz. I'm with the Glendale Police Officers Association. I've been a board director for about 10 years with the association, and I have no expectations of this. I'm honored to be here, and thank you guys for letting us have a seat at the table, and I'm looking forward to working and meeting with all of you.
Thank you, Mike. Susan Wolfson.
My name is Susan Wolfson. I am a CPA. I have 2 master's degrees, one in public health, one in accountancy and taxation. Glendale resident for about 14 years. Parks, recreation, and my interest in this is making sure a city is financially sustainable for all of the stakeholders, which includes the employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Finch, I'm sorry, you didn't have your, in your thing, it doesn't list your first name, so.
Hi there. I'm Alison Finch. I represent the Glendale Management Association. I am the current president of the union, and I've been with the city for about 14 years. I've been on the GMA for about 6 years, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you as well. And I don't think I really have any expectations. I'm just happy to be here and honored to have been selected and represent the association. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Alan Manning.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alan Manning. My wife and I have lived in Glendale for almost 32 years. In 2018, I retired from the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office, where for 13 years I was the managing assistant city attorney in charge of the Pension General Counsel Division, which serves as general counsel for the 3 Los Angeles city pension plans. Prior to joining the city attorney's office in 2005, I was general counsel of Wilshire Associates, an investment services firm in Santa Monica. I look forward to serving on this committee. I saw about the formation back in May when I was reading the news press, and I thought it would be an interesting way to maybe contribute something to the city where maybe some of my background might be useful.
Thank you. Thank you. Grant Michaels.
Good afternoon. My name is Grant Michaels. I am one of the appointed members of the commission. I have been representing several different community groups, including the Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council. I've served on the Community Services and Parks Commission, as well as other organizations. Professionally, I am a computer consultant, project manager. I'm looking to lend my expertise as well as be able to share the information the committee puts out to the neighborhood associations in Glendale and be a conduit for their feedback coming in. Thank you.
Yeah. Herbert Milano.
Hi, everybody. My name is Herbert Milano. I've been a resident of Glendale for over 30 years, a property owner in Glendale, a multifamily for 34 years. And my profession has been in systems implementation, what is generally termed as ERP, for the mid-range sectors of manufacturing companies. So I installed financial systems and manufacturing systems for about 200 companies. I became interested in the pension system way back in 2004, and I've been pursuing this type of committee and presentation for a very long time. And so I need to give thanks to the City Council for their courage in bringing this forward. It has been a long road to get us to where we are. And I want to take the time to convey my appreciation for the Glendale Police Officers Association and the Glendale Firefighters Association and the other employee groups who are participating here. Because I know that this is, for many, perhaps a difficult road to travel as we begin to look into the challenges of the pension system and the problems we have. So it is with high hopes that I have with regard to the level of communication that we can have here in this group, so that we can find a solution to this incredibly difficult problem that we've had for the past 18 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Laura Nelson.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Laura Nelson. I'm a resident of Glendale. I bought my house in Glen Oaks Canyon in 1998. I work as a nonprofit CFO since 1994, currently at a Jewish legal aid firm called Bet Zedek. Before that, I was at 211 LA County. I've worked for AIDS Healthcare Foundation, and I specialize in nonprofit finance as a CFO. And I volunteered to do this as a way to serve my community in the city where I live and all those that work there. So I'm happy to participate. Thank you.
Mike Bain.
Hi, I'm Mike Bain, and I am a pension actuary. I design and administer all types of defined benefit and 401k plans in the private sector. And I'm hoping to be able to use my expertise in this area to bring some clarity and understanding of the different and often confusing sets of numbers that are provided.
Thank you, Mike. I know we'll be calling on you. It's a critical piece of this. Roland Kadekin.
Hello, my name is Roland Kadekin, a resident of Glendale since 2001. I'm an attorney, a bankruptcy attorney, and I have been involved in Glendale politics since 2013. I have been concerned with regards to the pension obligations of Glendale and raised issues in that regards. And my hope and objective is that at least this committee as a total at the end of the report, we would generate some sort of a roadmap that City Council could follow, whether politically or financially, that we can address our pension obligations properly, where it's sustainable for the citizens and fair and equitable for the employees. And hopefully, if it's that good, other cities will emulate us.
I'm gonna mess up your name. Zara Amirian.
That was a fantastic attempt, John. It's yeah, Zara Amirian. I am a lifelong resident of Glendale for the past about 32 years, and I have served in a couple of different boards and commissions. Currently, for the past 16 years, and currently the chair of the audit committee for the city of Glendale. I'm a small business owner by trade, and I'm honored to be on this board with each of you and look forward to doing what we can to clarify this very complex issue, which affects every stakeholder in this city, both residents and employees.
Amy Martin.
Amy, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon. My name is Amy Martin, Assistant Director of Human Resources, proudly serving the City of Glendale for over 22 years. In my current role, among other areas, I oversee benefits administration and also participate in the Health Benefits Committee alongside the various members of the associations.
Okay, well, I did want to also go just have the staff all all the staff introduce themselves in case folks aren't familiar with them. And so, first of all, have I missed anybody who's actually on the Blue Ribbon panel to staff? Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Knights. You're muted.
Yes. Hi, I'm Alex Knights, and I've been a resident of Glendale since 2010. By trade, I am a pension actuary. So, I help clients, manage, help clients manage their pension plans and give them advice on exactly what we'll be discussing, for Glendale. And when I saw the opportunity to use my professional skills, volunteer using my professional skills, I was happy to send in my application and happy to be accepted.
Thank you, and I'm sorry. With the squares occasionally move around, and it's a little hard. So, okay, just to go through quickly the Glendale employees who are present. We have. I'll let you. We have Matthew Doyle.
Hi, I'm Matt Doyle. I'm the Director of Human Resources. I've been with the city approximately 33 years, and I'm happy to be here and really here is if there are any questions relative to our work over the years in addressing pension issues, primarily working with our employee groups on that. But other than that, again, happy to be here and quite impressed with the expertise of this group. It's really great to see this kind of talent amongst our residency. So thank you.
City Attorney Michael Garcia.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike Garcia. I'm the City Attorney, and I'll be kind of helping John, I guess, a little bit with the procedural aspects of some of these meetings, and I'm glad to be here and be working with you. Thank you.
John.
Hello, everybody. John Taktalian. I'm the Deputy City Manager. I've been with the organization here in the City of Glendale for nearly 20 years and a resident for about 18 of those. I was the lucky one who drew the short straw many years ago when we were figuring out who was going to take on the topic of pensions, as there was questions and requests for staff reports to council. And I've kind of carry the torch up until this point alongside Matt and Michelle Flynn and Mike Garcia here. So at this point, I'm glad we're all here. I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad we have John to be our facilitator. And I'll be here as staff support to provide any assistance along the way.
Thank you. And so at the bottom of the screen, first of all, I should mention, obviously, Horik, I think you sort of introduced yourself at the beginning, but you'll be serving, I gather, as our secretary.
I'll let John answer that question.
Yes. And John, could I just ask, is if it's possible for you to maybe move your mic a little bit closer to where you are? I understand that the volume's coming in very low, if that's possible.
Knew I should have done this from my studio and not my office, but there you are. Does that work any better? I can also work on settings in a minute. Let me work on the settings. So we have 3 folks who aren't on. Lisette.
Hello.
Yourself briefly.
My name's Lisette Poliasero. I'm just from the IT department.
Okay, thank you. All right. So Luke, why don't you introduce yourself? You're around here somewhere. Luke Jensen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Luke Jensen. I'm John Holtzman's legal assistant, and I'll be here taking minutes and helping John stay on track as best I can.
Yeah. So, all right. So let me introduce myself very briefly, and then we'll move on to we do have a lot to do. My name is John Holtzman. I am a lawyer. Sorry. I've spent a good bit of my career working in public sector, including 15 years as Chief Deputy City Attorney in San Francisco. Much of my career has been devoted to pension issues and labor issues. I also deal extensively with government finance issues. I worked in the bankruptcies in Vallejo and Stockton, for example, and obviously the interrelationship of benefit issues and financial issues of cities. I'm a partner of a law firm in the city, City of San Francisco, called Rennie Public Law Group, founded by myself and Louise Rennie, who was a longtime city attorney of San Francisco. I'm really honored to be asked to be the facilitator here. It's a great group. I'm really excited to work with everybody. My job is not to get in the way of what you guys want to do, but to facilitate what and get you the information, the people, etc., that you need, and provide assistance where I can. We will be going over those rules of order shortly, and I guess from there we'll have a better idea of what role with respect to actually leading. Before we move to what I consider to be the central issue for tonight, which is the development of the unification of rules of order and procedures, which expect may take a little bit of time, and the selection of the executive committee, I think you are aware we are a Brown Act committee. Garcia is going to talk to us a little later, provide, assuming we have time, and if we don't, we'll do it in our second meeting, a little bit of training on the Brown Act. I gather from listening to a number of you quite familiar with the Brown Act, but I want to make sure that everybody's familiar with the Brown Act and what it's in terms of how we conduct ourselves. So one aspect of the Brown Act is taking a public. The next item on the agenda, which is entitled Oral Communications, allows the public to comment on matters that are not on the agenda tonight. Because we're so short on time tonight, public comment to a maximum of 20 minutes and 2 minutes per comment.
Hey, John, can you speak up a little bit louder? I think sure.
I was going to say I'm limiting. I will turn this up as soon as I get a minute here, but I'm going to limit comment to 20 minutes so that we can be sure we get through our agenda tonight, or 2 minutes per person, members of the public. And again, this is comment on items that are not on the agenda. So, Arik, are you the one who knows who's called in or not? Do we have callers?
Yes, I'm the one, and no, we do not have calls, but I need to read this into the record. So item 3 is oral comment. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Committee may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. Staff may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report. So there are no callers at this moment.
Right, well, thank you. So then with no callers, we'll move on. We do not have any consent items. Do you need to call the item nonetheless?
Yes, so item 4 is consent items, and as you mentioned, we do not have any items. Item 5 is action items. Item 5A, committee purpose. Item 5A1, discuss council's directions.
Okay, so what I would like to do is I'd like to have Luke. Do you have co-hosting privileges?
I can share my screen.
You can share your screen. I'd like you to share your screen with the council objectives, and we'll take comment from members on thoughts they might have on this. Otherwise, it'll just serve as a refresher for.
Mr. Holtzman, could I interrupt? I want to introduce or have introduced a last minute substitution for this committee, a firefighter, Ara Zakarian, who's representing the GFFA Firefighters Association.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. My name is Ara Zakarian. I'm the Vice President of Glendale Firefighters Association, Local 776. Extremely happy to be a part of this team and looking forward to getting through it all together as a team. Thank you for having me.
I'm just trying out my mic. Is this better? Is this louder? Great. Okay. So Luke, have we put that up? Okay, so the staff proposal and Mike, I'm assuming this is what was accepted, in fact, by council. Are the 6 items that are towards the bottom of this page?
That's correct.
Okay, so the items are to review the city's pension system to offer a better understanding of its structure and its future costs, to conduct a review and opinion on what the city has accomplished to date with its pension reform efforts, to recommend options for reducing or eliminating the city's unfunded actuarial liability, to review alternative financing methods potentially available to the city, to evaluate the feasibility of offering alternative retirement solutions, and to produce a final report and recommendations to the city regarding a prudent approach to addressing pension expenses. So is there any comment from committee members on?
Yes. Mr. Holtzman?
Yes.
Okay. In item number 1, which says review the city's pension system, I am hoping that we have an opportunity to look at the history of the pension system and the changes that occurred in 2001 and 2005, which are the major changes that I think has caused the significant increase in the liability. So it is my hope that we are able to review the last 20 years and have data with regard to what has been the impact so far of this pension structure that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. And that by the way, I certainly think a central issue that I think we will all agree changes going to,
Mr. Holtzman, R is occurring here.
Hi.
Hey, in addition to that, I think Member Milano is also correct. In addition, we should also look at the changes that happen, if we can focus in on the PEPRA changes, and some of those changes that also happen would also help us. In addition, if we can, is there any way we can actually get what is projected on the screen right now? Can we get that emailed?
Yes, absolutely. I'll have Luke email it to everybody.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Excuse me, Mr. Holtzman, this is Susan Wolfson. I just wanted to get a couple of things, clarification. Is this our 2 minutes of talking time, or what's going on here in terms of our agenda?
So you'll have a number of opportunities to talk. Obviously, the key issue for today, as I say, the 2 action items are really the bylaws and selection of the executive committee. But obviously, you should, and there will obviously be a lot of opportunity to talk about the substance of what we're going to cover. I think that the issue right now is, are there comments on what council's goals were, or elaborations that folks would like to emphasize at the outset?
So we're on we're on action item 5A1, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Holtzman, may I interject one more item that I just remembered?
Yes, please.
As I look at this list of 6 objectives, I would like to suggest that in the process of evaluating the pension system, that we look at the financial impact to the city's services, infrastructure, debt obligations that it has had as a result or as a potential impact of the pension system. So I just wanted to make that clear, that we evaluate how this pension system has impacted the city's overall sustainability in terms of infrastructure and services to the public.
So here's my suggestion. These objectives are in the proposed rules of procedure. You might want, when we get to that, which will be the next item, you may want to propose that as a seventh item, and that'd probably be the time to have a discussion to see where the committees will. Any other comments on this, or we'll move to the rules of procedure? Okay, let's. Mark, you want to call item 5B?
Sure. Item 5B, Rules of Order and Procedures. Item 5B1, Review and discuss draft of rules of order and procedures.
Okay, now we're going to put these up on the screen. However, we also sent them to everybody earlier. We do have one change that we're going to be making, which we'll talk about. But look, if maybe you want to put this up and take comments on, any or all parts of the procedures.
John, could I just interject real quickly? I apologize. Is it appropriate to take a moment to try to fix the audio issue on your side, if at all possible? The volume is coming down very low.
It's still very low? Okay, so
it's good at this point.
But it didn't fix it. Okay, let me work on that. Why don't we...
John, this is Jason Bradford, the Chief Information Officer.
Yes.
If you see an audio and video up at your title, you can click on it and click on speaker and microphone settings, and there you can adjust your input volume.
So here's my suggestion so we don't waste time. If somebody else wants to take the gavel for a few minutes, why don't we have Mike Garcia just take the gavel for a minute while I work on this. What I'd ask you to do is raise your hands. Luke is going to try to keep track of what order people raise their hands in. Not always easy to do on this forum. And then we'll tell Michael who to call.
Sure, I can do that. So I guess the rules of order and procedures were provided as part of the packet. If we want to maybe take this in order of some of the items that might go through, that you might have suggestions on. The first section, I guess, is everybody comfortable doing it that way, or any objection to kind of going through it in pieces? Some of it.
Excuse me. We've already basically gone over section 1 by talking about what the council. So why don't we just move on to section 2 in the interest of time, if you don't mind?
No, that's fine. Just as Jonathan mentioned, section 2.2 related to conflict of interest, because this is a committee of a limited duration, this particular provision, including the filing of Form 700s, will not apply to this committee. So we're going to propose to strike that from the rules of procedure. Section 2.3 deals with confidentiality. Again, I don't think we anticipate there'll be a lot of confidential information that's shared, but in the event that there is, in case there's a request for a legal memorandum, for example, that might be. But anyway, to the extent there is confidential information, there has to be a requirement that the confidential information is not divulged.
Mr. Garcia, I had a question with regards to the conflict of interest question over there.
Sure.
In particular, I think we're discussing some pension benefits of a lot of employees who are participating. Is that an issue or not? Because they are obviously going to be impacted with any recommendations or whatever else we do here.
Sure. Thank you for asking that question, Mr. Kadekin. So under the FPPC regulations, salary and benefits of employees does not create a conflict of interest under the conflict of interest laws. And mainly that's because in any setting where we're discussing this, where there are employees involved in making recommendations, the FPPC has decided not to make that a conflict of interest. Private interest, privately held interest and that sort of thing may create a conflict of interest, but there isn't a conflict of interest associated with employees' salaries and benefits.
Thank you.
Mr. Garcia?
Yeah.
With regard to the confidentiality section, if the information is available on the web, for example, what a particular person or position has earned in the city of Glendale in the past, even though I can access that information today free of charge on the web, I was wondering if there would be a potential conflict if we were to present some information, if needed, to highlight, let's say, how the pensions have increased or are currently being applied.
Mr. Milano, to the extent that information is available publicly, I think that would be permissible to reference it.
Thank you.
I'm going to I'll wait for Jonathan to come back to have a discussion on 2.4 and 2.5.
Mr. Garcia, what kind of confidentiality information are we anticipating that we might need to sign? Are we in particular?
And I'd have to wait for Jonathan to get back on to answer that fully, but I don't think we anticipate anything, but just in case if there's, for example, a confidential request for a confidential opinion, that sort of matter. But again, it's there just in case there is something that the committee decides, for example, if it wants to hear something that might be protected either by attorney-client privilege or any sort of other type of privilege, then it would be the committee that would hold that privilege, or it would be the committee that would make that decision whether to hold it as confidential, I guess. And that's kind of the reason why it's in there.
Can you guys hear me this way?
Yeah.
This is John. Let's try a different dial in.
Much
Does that
better.
work?
Yeah, John, I think that sounds a little better.
Okay, we'll try this. So yeah, just to echo what Mike just said, we really don't expect anything, but I'll give you an example. There could be situations where information might divulge, for example, the names of individuals in situations where there's a confidentiality issue. There could be legal issues. We really don't expect this, but my experience from facilitating other groups is sometimes you run into these issues when you don't expect them, so it's just useful to have. So if I can go on to the facilitator, the proposal is that the facilitator would serve as the presiding officer of the committee, but that there would be an executive committee of 3 members who are elected by the Blue Ribbon Committee. It says it's a second meeting, but actually, if we can get to it today, I'd like to be able to get to it today. That committee is also a Brown Act committee. That's just by action of law. That's not a decision. And the thought is that the executive committee would work with the facilitator to develop the agenda for the meetings, plan presentations, and assist in the development of the final report. It's also intended that that executive committee would represent a cross-section of the viewpoints, and obviously we don't exactly know what those viewpoints are just yet, but in general, a cross-section of the interests of the committee members. So that's the proposal. All right.
Are we to make comments about this at this time?
I think that would be fine. Yes.
Okay. This is Susan Wolfson. I want to just say that I have some concern about this approach, and I understand as a practical matter we're a large committee, and there's concern that we may take too long or have difficulty coming down to agreement on the agendas. But I'm concerned that this may limit the amount of substance that ends up on the agendas. And I just want to go on record as saying I'm concerned about that. My feeling is that we have a job to do as a committee. Our job is to dig into the data, get very clear understanding of it, so that we can then communicate to council and to the rest of the stakeholders what the situation is. And if everything is fine and if it's sustainable, then that's fine, you know. But if it's not sustainable, by being vague about things or obfuscating or deferring the real hard work that we need to do is not going to change the facts. And my concern is with finding all the facts and also communicating them clearly and completely. And I have some severe concerns about this section. I'm also concerned about the limitation on the number of meetings and the length of time that the committee will be meeting, but I will address that when you get to it. Thank you.
Other comments?
This is
I
Brent
share
Michael.
Sorry, go ahead, Brad.
I would like to get a little bit of clarification of how members of the general committee, much like the city council, can go ahead and request a report or information. If the process can be clarified of how committee members could request information or an exploration of a topic that is outside of the executive committee, much like in city council, where a staff report can be requested by one council member and a second would be needed. So if someone could clarify that procedurally, I would appreciate that.
So I think, as written, the thought is that there are two different ways. There are really three different ways that matters can get on the agenda. And this, of course, can be changed. But it would be, one would be the facilitator, two would be the executive committee, three would be a majority of the committee. And really, there's a fourth, which is any committee member approaching the executive committee. The thought, really, in my mind, was to ensure that, as a facilitator, I'm covering the issues that the committee is interested in. That and that there's at least some substantial interest in the committee in the issue. In other words, not just one person on the committee. So that was really the thinking behind this. It's completely up to the committee how they want to handle that.
Mr. Holtzman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have been in some fairly large boards, 25 people sometimes, where an executive committee truly facilitated the movement of agenda items and was able to summarize the discussions. But nonetheless, for a smaller committee like this one, at what point do we determine that an executive committee really is needed? Should we not try first without an executive committee and see if we're able to proceed expeditiously before we create a subcommittee as such to determine the direction?
Roland Kadekin here. I don't know, Mr. Holtzman, if you're trying to answer, but I also wanted to jump in and express my concern with regards to the executive committee setting the agenda items. In particular, what are the mechanisms? 2 out of 3 of the executive members get to decide what's going to be on the agenda. How is that, the mechanics of it is of concern to me? Because what my main concern is that the whole discussion and everything will be governed by the executive committee setting the agenda, and that might not be a thorough and complete understanding of what's going on.
Okay. Other comments on this issue?
Yes. I have a question, which is, will there be a section in the agenda somebody could propose something for a future agenda? How, in other words, how do we get into the discussion in the first place? Will it have a place on the agenda to do that?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Luke, if you scroll down, there's a rule on that, and let's just see here. Here we go. Request for, it's item 5 in the order of business. So that would be on every agenda. Other questions or comments? I can, let me make my pitch here. If there aren't, I wanted to wait to hear from everybody on this issue first, though. So my thought had been not that the executive committee was going to be in charge, so to speak, but that it is helpful for me as a facilitator to have this is, by the way, this is a fairly large group. This is a 15-person committee. It's not 25, but it's 15. To have some folks who, I can talk to in some detail about how to be sure that we're presenting all of the information, and the issues, laying out the sessions in a way, that will address the concerns of the largest number of people on the committee. And so my thought was that this was a way of focusing that conversation a little bit and giving me, honestly, a group that it's a little bit smaller to just talk through, really more than anything else, to talk through the agenda items, and with the thought that the executive committee itself would be spending time talking more offline with committee members. One real challenge that we have, I wouldn't want to say anything negative about the Brown Act, but a challenge in the Brown Act is we are limited in the ways in which we can communicate offline. And Mike will give you a little summary of this when we get to the Brown Act section, but anything more than a quorum of the committee cannot be exchanging views with each other. And that doesn't mean that they can't be in the same room. It means that we can't have what are called seriatim meetings. So that poses a little bit of a challenge for me to be sure that I'm addressing the concerns of the committee, of the largest number of people in the committee. So that was my thinking. I'm not wedded to it, but I actually felt that it would be helpful in actually doing kind of the reverse of what I think people were concerned about, is not so much limiting conversation, but actually being sure that we address the largest number of concerns. So why don't we do this? I think we should finish going through this. Then what my process thought, I had hoped that if there are changes, that they'd be consensus. I can't tell at this point if they are or they're not. Once we go through this once, I think we will take motions to amend particular sections, and we'll vote on those. But I think it probably makes sense to go through and have one conversation about the whole thing before we do the motions. So let's keep moving, if that's all right with everybody. Subcommittees, there's nothing all that remarkable about it. We can have subcommittees. They can be created by the larger committee. There is a provision here for the automatic removal of committee members who miss 3 meetings in a row without excuse from the presiding officer. And again, as written, that would be me. The next part is really straight out Brown Act. It's anticipated, this is of course a Brown Act committee. It is a Brown Act committee by law because it is appointed by, in significant part, not entirely, but in significant part by your city council. It's anticipated that we would meet twice a month through December. That's again, open for discussion, but I would say to those who would like to meet more frequently than that it does take some time to prepare sessions, and I want to make sure we have enough time to have fruitful, well thought out sessions.
Excuse me, Mr. Holzman, may I make a comment about this?
Sure, please do.
I have some concerns about the limitation of saying a deadline of December. I think this committee needs to meet for as long as it takes for us to get a thorough understanding of the full unexpurgated liabilities and to develop a clear and complete explanation of them. And the city officials have been talking about forming this committee since 2018. The application process for it has been in process since March. I mean, I feel that this is very lopsided. It took 9 months or 6 months to form the committee, and we're expecting the committee to finish its work in half that time. I don't think that's realistic. I just want to go on record and say I don't think we should set a deadline like that in light of all of this. The other thing I want to say is that I really think that our meetings should be held during evening hours when members of the public who are employed can watch live without endangering their livelihoods. I think it's very important to a lot of people in the city, and I don't think it's fair for us to meet at a time when working folks can't participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Other comments?
I would second the concern of Ms. Wilson with regards to the deadline. I don't think it's a good idea to put a hard deadline on this. I mean, this is not a simple problem. If it was, we wouldn't have a committee of 15 people. We wouldn't have a blue ribbon committee. So I don't know why it has to be resolved within 3 months with 6 meetings, and whether it's feasible. So maybe we can have something without a set deadline, but more as a general guideline, I guess, but nothing that would require to terminate by December of 2021.
Thank you. Other comments?
Mr. Holzman?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Okay. Maybe if we find out what the rationale was by the city council to create this deadline of December. Are there decisions that need to be made early in January or early February that would impact them? If the city council has, for example, postponed the negotiations on the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding with the employees, and they're planning, let's say, on making a decision in January, then I can see why we may need to at least come to some kind of conclusion by December. But if there is no overriding reason, then maybe we should vote to reconsider and suggest to the city council a change to this particular deadline. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I just ask, Mike, obviously I wasn't there when this was adopted by council. Was there a specific thought by council on this issue?
I'd probably defer to John on that one because he prepared the report and presented to the council, and he probably better speak to it.
Certainly. The report that was prepared for council did have a general timeline. Now, I know committee member Wolfson indicated that the committee or the decision was made many months ago. It took 6 months to form the committee. That was all taken into consideration at the time that we made the presentation to the city council. I believe, and I don't have the staff report in front of me, we had indicated that we anticipated having meetings from the beginning of September, possibly end of August, all the way through December. So we really intended for this to be about a 3.5 to 4 month engagement with a deadline of December 31st, by which the committee would have met, and then we would have worked on the final list of recommendations in a staff report, reviewed and approved by the committee, to be presented to the council sometime in January. So I don't think that we would be in disagreement that the deadline perhaps could be extended a little bit beyond December. But even with the timeline that we've now started on, anything beyond January is in excess of what council had viewed as a scope and timeline for this committee.
So what if we change the December to January through January, because to make up for that month, and then we can always add some language here, subject to. I have to think of the exact words, but basically, subject to being revisited by the committee, depending on where we are.
Mr. Holtzman?
Yes.
I don't believe that I received an answer to my question with regard to the justification for that deadline. But what we could do, alternatively, is wait until November to see how far along we are, and then suggest that it be extended based upon how much progress we have made. But I would still like to know what the justification was for that deadline. Thank you.
So I think, sure.
If I may, John, and I'm not going to continue to chime in without being recognized, but to answer the question, because I think Mr. Milano's question is directed towards me. The justification was that we also had to identify a number of hours to hire our facilitator for, and there was a budget for that. This isn't. This is all part of the agreement that we have with Mr. Holtzman as well. So council did have a focus on making sure that this committee had every opportunity to review whatever information it chose to review within a reasonable timeline to be able to put an end to the discussions. But having said that, if there is a need for some additional time to complete that task, city staff is not going to oppose that as long as it's within that four and a half month time frame.
I would also just offer that having some time pressure is often a good thing. I'm general counsel of a very large police reform Blue Ribbon Commission, and we had a 3-month timeline. It was ultimately extended to 4. I felt that having the urgency and the focus was actually really a positive thing, to push through this. My concern is these things can drag on. Pension issues are, as everybody knows, they're a little bit bottomless in terms of what can be said about them. So I would, I guess personally, and again, not just based on the length of my engagement, but also as a practical matter, I think some degree of urgency is a good thing.
Just to chime in a little bit more, I'm not suggesting that it should be an indefinite time frame. I just find it concerning that it took 6 months, to get the thing organized, and then we're expecting to do the work in less than, really less than half the time. And I would hate to see us shortchange our city residents, our city employees, our city employee associations by not doing a thorough job. And, if there's something that I'm incorrect about, but when I heard this talked about previously, I had heard that the committee would start meeting during the summer in July. It was only in May they said, oh, we didn't get enough applications. So it's hard for me to understand if it's so difficult to just review the applications, how can you expect us to get the pension thing? We haven't even started. We're going through the rules of order and procedures. When are we going to start digging into the meat and potatoes? I think we need to leave ourselves sufficient time for that. Thank you.
Just if I may ask, Ms. Wilson, I mean, assuming it's 4.5 months, would you agree that's a sufficient time?
Well, hopefully it would be. I mean, we'd have to see. I mean, I like the suggestion that was made about seeing where we are in November. We need to see how much data is going to be provided and how quickly. Are we going to be able to do what we need to do? But I don't like the idea that this time was devoted to all of this stuff, you know, and I understand that the city may have developed a budget for the facilitators' hours and so forth, but really, this is a very serious matter and it's an important problem. And I know it's important to a lot of people in the city. So.
I guess what I would, all right. I mean, I guess let's see when we get to a vote, you know, and where we are. I guess what I would suggest, partly too, because this is a decision that doesn't just belong, in my view, to the committee, because it has to do with resource and resources allocated to the committee. So I think this is a bit of an issue where we need to work with. You know, with the city on this. So my suggestion is that we set a deadline with the understanding that if we're not making the progress we need, we can reset it and we can extend it. I think that would be the most, at least from my perspective, the most comfortable thing. I would like to see us have a deadline we're working against.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Milano. I think that we have very capable committee members, and I was especially impressed by the fact that we have individuals with project management experience. So we really value the idea of having a definitive date by which something needs to be accomplished. But I just want to remind everyone that we have a pending obligation of over $600 million, and the impact during the past 18 years has been quite substantial to the city's finances. So it is my suggestion that having a deadline allows us to stay focused, but also the additional time will allow members to digest the volumes of data that they need to understand, and also for the additional time for the public to get acclimated to the significant issues that we are facing. And that additional time could be very substantial in increasing the number of people who understand what is taking place with the pension system. Thank you.
Other comments on this, or shall we keep going? We're going to come back, as I say, to motions.
I just had one quick comment. This is Laura Nelson. What I'm hearing is that we want to have a deadline, or I think of it as a target, so that we can stay focused, try to reach our, you know, whatever we're going to do by that time. But yet we don't want to just end early, prematurely, not do a good, complete job. And just have some kind of arbitrary end, right? So I think, so you're setting a target of how long you think it'll take, but if we need more time, then we'll extend it. And I think then the committee will know as we dig in, you know, do we need more time? Because we want to, I think everybody here, it's great that everybody is really committed to doing a great, good and thorough job. So that's encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. Okay, let's just move on through the. I'm sorry.
Before we move on, let me just offer the suggestion that as part of the procedure, we continue to evaluate our progress as this project goes along, so that way we don't run to a deadline and decide that we aren't finished, and then deal with that as a crisis, but continue to evaluate our progress as we go, and be able to inform staff, city council that did authorize the budget if we feel we would like to continue and explore other areas, just so that there is some evaluation as this goes
on. Makes sense to me. Okay, let's plug on through. Hopefully we're through most of the things that are actually, you know, debatable. Committee acts by motion. That's not terribly surprising. The quorum is a majority. The minutes will be kept by Luke. We're not going to write his name in there, but that's Luke is keeping the minutes. Rules of order, Robert's Rules of Order. I will say, I just want to sort of state for the record that my hope is really that within the confines of the Brown Act, et cetera, that we can act informally as much as possible, you know, and collaboratively and by consensus, to the extent that we can. I think that's a real goal. at least in my mind. But you know, to the extent we need them, Robert's Rules of Order.
Mr. Holzman?
Yes.
I want to.
I've got a question. I have a question about that.
Sure. Yes, please.
Okay. That is it possible to say, rather than that meetings shall be governed by Robert's rules, that we say that Robert's rules will be a guideline, which will give us a little bit more flexibility, I think along the lines of what you suggested.
I like that a lot. Unless there's an objection, I think we should make that change. Yes, I'm sorry. Herbert. Herbert, I think you're muted, maybe.
Thank you very much. I agree with the concept that just was expressed, but I want to add one particular modification, if we can, to Robert's Rules of Order. And it's basically in the way that we label a particular motion. And I'm particularly concerned about what is called calling the question. And I would like to have that name changed to motion to end debate, and use that type of phraseology for it, so that we're all aware that the Robert's Rules of Order provides for a proper process of recognizing the person who utters the calling the question, and then the second that needs to be accepted prior to moving a vote towards ending debate. I have been in committees where this particular part of Robert's Rules of Order is abused in the passion, if it ever gets that way in our discussions. And I just want to make this particular suggestion, that it be called motion to end debate, and that it be properly recognized by the chair, so that we can proceed with the proper conduct of proper discussion and deliberation. Thank you.
Other comments along this line regarding Robert's Rules? Okay, let's keep going. Final report. Again, we were tasked with the final report. So I don't think there's anything really remarkable there. Obviously, there will be agendas, and that's again essentially straight out of the government code, and they will be posted 72 hours in advance, unless it's a special meeting, in which case they'll be posted they could be posted 72 hours, but have to be posted at least 24 hours in advance. Order of business. Call to order, general comment, public comment, the business items, reports of subcommittees and committee members. That's for, as we discussed earlier, future agenda items adjournment. Again, that's pretty standard. This language about not discussing items that aren't on the agenda is essentially the Brown Act. That's really just a restatement of what the Brown Act requires. This was the procedures for the, essentially the order of action is presiding officer calls the item. Actually, in this case, it sounds like it won't be the presiding officer. It would actually be the secretary. Will call the item. We should make that change. There'll be report. There'll be questions. Now, I will say this is flexible in this respect. You know, what I'm imagining will happen is that we will probably want to have a number of experts come in and talk about some items. And I would imagine that there'll be questions directly and back and forth, et cetera, with whoever is presenting. And then there'll be other times, I suspect, where we won't have a presenter, where we'll be, you know, talking among ourselves and debating, you know, data or possible actions. Anyway, the usual process for motions. much of this on public participation is just legal. The not being required to provide certain information in order to attend. General public comment, we've talked about before. Public comment on each agenda item is, again, Brown Act. Manner of recognizing folks. This is always a little bit more complicated on Zoom, but that's the general idea. And then the ability to limit public comment, as I unsuccessfully did earlier when we had no public comment, but obviously important to be sure that we get our work done. Most of this, again, voting procedure is very straightforward. One thing you should know is that under the the emergence provisions of the Brown Act, and now the new provisions that are coming in with respect to virtual meetings, that we are required to have a roll call vote in virtual meetings on essentially everything. So where we have to have a vote, I apologize. There are certain items such as motion to adjourn that I sometimes scratch my head and wonder why we have to have a roll call vote on adjourning, but that's what the Brown Act says. Okay. Reconsideration, again, nothing remarkable here. Luke, is that it? Okay. So it is. All right. So I think let's go in order of the comments that were made and see whether, well, maybe we should do it a different way, which is why don't we see who wishes to make a motion for any particular change, and we'll just make a list of the motions from it.
Mr. Holtzman, I have a question before we proceed in that direction.
Sure.
With regards to, maybe Mr. Garcia could answer the question more, but with regards to moving an agenda item on a regular board meeting, what would be the requirement as opposed to having an executive committee?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Roland?
Yeah. I was asking if if there is no executive committee and we want to move an item put an agenda item, what would be the proper procedure? Any committee member moves it, and does it need a second? What's the procedure?
Yeah, so I mean that's and that goes to Mr. Holtzman's point of having an executive committee, because otherwise the committee would have to would develop a procedure to add. Would need to develop a procedure to add items to the agenda. Or could do so. As I think what you're referring to is what the council practices, where council member has to request an item during the council meeting, and then it has to get at least one of the council members' support to add it. So the committee would have to come up with a strategy to add stuff, and that's, I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong. That was part of the rationale for having this executive committee. All the committee members could request items to be put on the agenda. And there could be discussion about that, but it would be the executive committee would kind of refine that and decide which items to bring when. I mean, that's my understanding why John was proposing that, because otherwise it becomes a little clunky, especially with a 15-member committee regarding adding stuff to the agenda and how it gets put on the agenda.
Okay. Yeah, Mike, that's exactly what my thinking was. And let me just say, I mean, the kind of information that we're hoping, the quality, I mean, yet to be seen, but the quality of information we hope to be able to bring you requires a fair amount of preparation. So when there's an item on the agenda, whether it's staff or me or consultants or whatever are going to have to put together, a significant amount of information. So it's, in my mind, it's useful to know that this is something that, there's significant interest in the committee. And so that's why it seemed to me the executive committee was a good way to gauge that. You could, I mean, for whatever it's worth, you could have other procedures. You could say you can put it on by a majority of the committee. So the way that would work would be at the point at which folks are deciding at the end when they're asking for agenda items, they say, okay, we'd like X agenda item, and we'd have a vote of the committee, of the entire committee about whether to agendize.
Okay, thank you.
So specific proposals for amendment based on discussions
we've had. Well, I still feel uncomfortable with the 3-member executive committee that's going to be deciding on the agendas. I understand the practical considerations, absolutely, but 3, that's not very many. That's not very many members of this committee.
Well,
so,
let me, to help think out of the box a little bit here for a second. I mean, one possibility would be to do something like this. It'd be put on by the executive committee or by, 4 members, let's say, of the commission, or 5 members of the commission. I mean, you could choose any number you want, really. But my concern is I want there to be significant interest in that item, because obviously it's going to be very frustrating for other members to sit through things if it's a very small number of people on the committee who care about them. So,
right, 3 members
so you could have
is a very small piece of the committee. So that's what I would think, we should have 5, maybe 5 members, because that's how we do our other commissions, have 5 members, and they manage to develop their agendas,
So you're proposing a 5-member?
Yes.
Mr. Holtzman, I have a suggestion.
Yes.
Is it possible technologically, at least, to, let's say, for those individuals who want to add an item to the agenda, to then it be, for example, emailed to all the members with a reply with regard to whether they concur, and go with the majority of the members who are accepting that that item be placed? What it would do, it would make everyone aware of the topics that one member feels strongly should be discussed. I know that there may be options already in place to do exactly that. This way, we're not dependent on a group of 3 or 5 making a decision as to what to include or not include on the agenda. And as we progress, some of these issues are going to be highly contentious, I am assuming. And I just want to make sure that there is no incentive to limit the type of discussion that we need to have, and to place delicate items on the agenda for future discussion. Thank you.
Herbert, you want transparency, right? You're talking about transparency.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So my concern is a Brown Act concern, and I like the idea, absent Brown Act, but I'm curious what you think about that. So Mike, the proposal, the thought was that Herbert's proposal was that members would circulate ideas for agenda items and would sort of indicate interest in this agenda item or that agenda item, but it would circulate to the entire.
Yeah, I think, and that was one of the topics. I mean, we'll probably do it the next time, but we get into the Brown Act discussion of circulating ideas amongst the committee members. It's very easy at that point to have, inadvertent discussions amongst each other about the substantive matters. And I mean, certainly if you want to, we could establish a procedure, for example, where the staff, you would email the staff with ideas, and then the staff will put that together and send it off to you in preparation for a subsequent meeting. We could probably do something like that. But yeah, I would be very wary of just start circulating emails with ideas amongst the committee members and it quickly becoming a Brown Act violation or Brown Act issue because we're having these email discussions.
Well, Mr. Holtzman, I think Mr. Garcia has, I think, the beginning of a potential solution. We can avoid the Brown Act violation by sending all of our requests for agenda items to, let's say, to you or to a member of the staff. And then he can then return it to everyone to say, which of these items do you feel strongly that should be in the agenda? This, I don't believe that everyone will be having a suggestion for an agenda item. But at least if I were to get a list, I'll say, yeah, I'll concur with this item, and this item that should be included, and then submit it to that center of information, whether it is the city staff or whether it is your office.
Yeah,
I think it should suffice.
I just want to be clear, Mr. Milano, I wouldn't suggest that staff send that to everybody and then ask for feedback of what goes on the agenda. I mean, that's what either a chair, or facilitator or the executive committee is for. So again, the staff or Mr. Holtzman can put that list together, but then it would have to come back to the committee to decide which of those items to put on the agenda. Again, this idea that Mr. Holtzman suggested was really not meant to limit the discussion by the committee members, but to really facilitate getting stuff on the agenda that the committee does want to have. And so, you know, John, I don't know what other suggestions you might have. But.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested in gauging how people would feel about a 5-person executive committee as opposed to the 3. You know, if that would solve the issue and the concern, it's a heck of a lot cleaner than any other solution I can think of.
Well,
do I recall that the executive committee was precluded from voting on the regular committee items?
Oh, no. It's simply, the point was the executive committee just doesn't have, the executive committee has no real powers except the ones that are delineated here. So the language in there about executive committee doesn't mean the executive committee members have the same powers as any other member of the committee. They don't have more power other than in these very limited areas. But no, they absolutely, they vote.
Mr. Holtzman, may I suggest something, possibly a solution?
Sure.
Maybe we can go with 3 or 5 executive member committee, but what is important that the executive committee, any agenda item that it rejects, it makes public, and the entirety of this board can at that point override it with a veto of 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever it is that we agree on to go ahead and make that an agenda item. Maybe that kind of strikes the balance between everything.
Yeah, and by the way, the rules do say that a majority of the committee can place anything on the agenda. So effectively, that's happening even the way it's written.
And effectively, when you're doing that, you don't really need a mechanism for circulating proposed items. Proposed items can actually be brought up at the meeting and voted on at the meeting, so you don't have a Brown Act problem that way. And so the committee then at the meeting can decide on agenda items for future meetings.
I guess if the executive committee kind of states what agenda items have been rejected and given opportunity for the entire committee to jump back in, then that would be fine.
Well, the way it'll end up working is you'll get to the point of the agenda where people recommend items for the agenda. And some number of executive committee members, if they really disagree with the executive committee, it would presumably it'd have to be no more than 2, would say the executive committee rejected this, but I still think it should be on. And at that point, the entire committee will have an opportunity to vote.
That will be good.
Yeah, I concur with Mr. Kadekin. He almost took the words out of my mouth as an idea, but I think it's an excellent solution. Thanks.
Okay. So do we have a consensus around, I mean, I'll admit I'm a little nervous about a larger executive committee because I was trying to get smaller, but if it solves the problem, I still think the executive committee is the way to go, and therefore if 5 solves the problem, and we have a consensus on that, I'd like to move forward with that.
Mr. Holtzman, from my perspective, 3 is even good. as long as we've got this mechanism. And again, we have a very tight deadline. We're working with a couple of months, and I don't want, I want quick action happening. And if there's a disagreement, it'll come back to the board and we can quickly decide. So I don't know, from your experience, you can tell us whether 3 executive committee or 5 member executive committee would move any faster or shorter.
I prefer 3, but I also want everybody to feel comfortable with our procedures. Here's my suggestion. I'm going to take this proposal from Ms. Wolfson and put it in the form of a motion, and let's have a quick vote. So her motion would be that executive committee would be made up of 5 rather than 3 members, and then we amend the rules accordingly. And I'd like for a roll call vote.
Quick point of clarification. You've said that there's some kind of mechanism that's going to be there for them to be added that weren't suggested. I mean, I'm not sure what's going on here. Is that
Sure.
in the verbiage somewhere already, or does it need to be added?
Let's. I'll tell you what. Let's take a look at that real quick. Luke, you want to put that back up on the screen? Thank you. I'm sorry. I should have clarified that. Okay, go down to agenda items. Executive committee. Wait, it's actually agenda. Yeah. The agenda will be set by the presiding officer in consultation with the executive committee. Blah 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 blah. And then thought. I'm sorry.
I think it's 2.5.
Okay, thank you. I remembered seeing it. Work. There you go. Right.
So you have it listed in your order of business, section 4.3, as item 5 in there. Is that the whole?
But 2.5 is where it is. 2.5 is right. It's right there. It's the last 2 lines of 2.5. It says. Oh wait, this is representations. I'm sorry, that's wrong. I'm sorry, I'm wrong.
I think, Mr. Holtzman, it's the first 2 lines of that 2.5, which basically says the executive committee is a separate body from the committee and does not have voting power on the committee or veto power over committee actions.
Right, but the issue was where does it say that a majority of the board effectively overrides executive committee with respect to agenda?
My reading is that does not have veto power.
Well, it doesn't specifically say that, but under 4.3, item 5, it lists requests for items on future agendas. So if that's part of the order of business, then you have an action item by the whole committee to vote on requests for items on future agendas.
So
right.
That's sufficient.
So my suggestion. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Here it is. There it is. Presiding officer, executive committee, or majority of the committee. There you go. Ha, I knew it was there somewhere.
Where was it you were reading?
It's in 4.5. It's not really in the right place, to be honest with you. It could be logically it should go. It should be under the agenda section.
So put it under 4.3.
It really should go in the agenda. The list of agenda is what, 2 point something, 2.5. I want to say.
No, the agenda is 4.
The agenda is 4.1.
Yeah. So we would put it in 4.1 is my feeling, so that it's not so confusing. So, but Ms. Wilson, in response to your question, that's the key section. So it's the presiding officer, the executive committee, or a majority of the committee.
How is the executive committee chosen? I mean, how do you get this broad section?
They are well, yeah. It's an interesting point. They're elected by the committee, one of the reasons why I originally said that the executive committee should be selected in the second meeting, and actually given our timing, that's going to happen anyway, is to give people some chance to really review who's on the committee and think about, who would make a good executive committee. But there's no question that this is hortatory language in terms of saying it should represent a broad cross-section. It's not enforceable, right? So that, is really relying on kind of my saying to you guys that the key, I think the key to this committee working will be making sure that people from different perspectives are on that executive committee. And kind of relying on the good faith of the committee in that respect.
And that may need more than 3.
Well, that's
I like 3 personally, but I don't think you're going to get a broad cross section that way.
Mr. Holtzman?
So, yes.
Do we have now sort of the framework for a motion to create a committee of 5 members, and where any agenda items suggested by members of the committee and denied to be placed on the agenda will be disclosed at the next meeting? Is that pretty much it, or is there more? Maybe Mr. Garcia, he's really good at this. But I think we're almost ready to have a motion to increase the executive committee to 5.
It's within the committee's call. I mean, that sounds like you put together a motion. Is there any?
So could I just say 2 other changes? You already talked about striking section 2.2. You talked about making a minor change to section 3.7. The Roberts Rules of Orders will be a guideline. I just want to remind the committee of all of these items. And then I just wanted to ask if we could possibly add a sentence to section 3.2, and I'll read what I wrote, and I don't know if this is properly but you can edit as needed. The committee may, by consensus, extend the time period of its work if that proves necessary.
Okay. I lost the last few words of your motion, though. May by consensus, I got.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I've had to hold my phone for the last hour because my phone was running out of power. I said the committee may, by consensus, extend the time period of its work
She broke up.
Yeah, was that just me, or did other people lose her last part of her sentence?
I think she's having a bandwidth issue.
What I heard though was the committee may.
The last was if that proves necessary.
So in other words, you're proposing that the committee have ultimate control over the length of the assignment, but the committee does not have control over the resources. So I'm not sure how the committee can make a final decision on that.
I would argue.
The phrase I used at the end is if that proves necessary. If that proves necessary.
May I add a friendly amendment to this? I would suggest that the committee would submit to the City Council a request for an extension to subsequent meetings.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me too. So why don't we also, though, at the same time move the date to at least the end of January, because I am concerned that we're now a month behind where we thought we were going to be.
Well, as we are still having discussion on this, my recommendation would be to follow a little bit of project management language, and as part of the reporting back to City Council, deliver on a schedule of deliverables of how our discussions are going. So that way we have a good understanding as the project moves forward. If we think we do need additional time, and can show justification to that to the city council, because they are the ones that would be setting the budget for the project. As opposed to setting a set calendar, my recommendation is to set a schedule of deliverables. That way all stakeholders know if the deliverables are being met or if additional time and resources are needed.
Makes sense.
Excellent. If that is put as a motion, you have my second on that.
All we got to do is write it down.
Right. John, are you comfortable with one motion on all those items, or do you want to break them up?
I have one other item that I think we should consider, and that is that I think that in our procedures that we ought to state when regular meetings shall be held, because otherwise there's no such thing as a regular meeting unless something says when the regular meeting shall be. Otherwise, everything's just a special meeting.
You're right about that. So I'm concerned that maybe we should try to capture the ones we've gone through first, because there may be others, but maybe we should go through and just quickly try to capture the ones that we've got. So I think the first motion was expanding XCOM to 5. I want to, this is a minor point, but move the language regarding a majority of the board, commission, I'm sorry, being able to place something on the ballot up into the agenda section, about on the ballot, the agenda. That I gather the third part of it was essentially that the executive committee would report on items that were proposed for the agenda but rejected.
Yes, I would second that motion.
Okay, can we get a roll call?
Committee Member Amirian,
Yes.
Committee Member Bain,
Yes.
Committee Member Kadekin,
Yes.
Committee Member Knight. He has to actually log off, so I'm going to skip over him. Committee Member Manning,
Yes.
Committee Member Macias,
Yes.
Committee Member Michael,
Yes.
Committee Member Milano,
Yes.
Committee Member Nelson,
Yes.
Committee Member Wolfson,
Yes.
Committee Member Finch,
Yes.
Committee Member Wentz,
Yes.
Committee Member Zakarian,
Yes.
Committee Member Paulos,
Yes.
and IBEW
Unanimous.
Roberts, who's not present.
Okay. Okay, we have a unanimous vote. Excellent. So this one's a quickie, but I guess we'll just knock it off. Changing Robert's rules to being a guideline. I'll have to work out the exact language, but that'll be a guideline, not a requirement. Can we get a roll call vote on that, please?
Committee Member Amirian,
Yes.
Committee Member Bain,
Yes.
Committee Member Kadekin,
Yes.
Committee Member Knight, absent. Committee Member Manning,
Yes.
Committee Member Macias,
Yes.
Committee Member Michael,
Yes.
Committee Member Milano,
Yes.
Committee Member Nelson,
Yes.
Committee Member Wolfson,
Yes.
Committee Member Finch,
Yes.
Committee Member Wentz,
Yes.
Committee Member Zakarian,
Yes.
Committee Member Paulos,
Yes.
and IBEW representative is absent.
Excellent. Okay, on 3.2, let me see. This is going to take a little bit of discussion. So my suggestion about how to frame that up is that we would change the language that says it'd be ending in December to say end in January. That, however, the committee may request an extension of that date, and here's my thought, that on or about November 30th, the committee will develop and produce for council a list of deliverables and scheduled dates. Is that, am I hitting everybody's thoughts here?
My recommendation.
John, I'm sorry. Let me just ask the administration, because I mean, again, this is one where they're the ones who are paying me. So, and the cost of this, is that acceptable to you guys?
We can certainly move forward with that motion if that's the committee's desire, and work it out as we go.
And I do believe.
I'm sorry, and somebody earlier.
Mr. Manning, I think, is trying to speak, but you're muted.
I'm sorry. Can we possibly, so we can get everything addressed on this item, instead of saying that the committee will meet twice a month, can we be more specific and say, for example, that the committee will meet on the first and third Wednesdays of each month until the assignment's completed? Or, I mean, just to specify when we're going to meet, so we'll have regular meetings.
I think we have a regular date, time and date that we were shooting for. John, did we?
Correct. The meeting date and time that we were going to propose today was going to be the first and third Mondays of the month at 6:30 p.m. That is, the reason for that is we have a number of different board, commission, committee meetings already scheduled. This was literally the only available time that we have to be able to televise it live and be able to take in live callers in compliance with the Brown Act. So we're sort of limited in the choices. What we would propose is first and third Mondays of the month, 6:30 p.m.
And that would address the concern raised about having these discussions in the evening as well.
I have a question, Mr. Holtzman, with regard to that suggestion.
Sure.
Is it possible that by having Mondays as the assigned date, that we will find ourselves with a conflict on 3-day holidays in the coming holiday season?
Yes. My thought about that, because we're so hemmed in, is on those times that becomes a problem, I'd have to sit there and figure out where it is, that we would probably schedule a special meeting. I mean, remember, this doesn't stop us from scheduling special meetings. So very typically when that happens, that's what you do. Okay, so I'm going to frame this up again. It would be regular meetings, first and third Mondays. The goal is to finish by the end of January. The committee can request an extension. I guess I'll have to work on the language and we'll bring it back, but essentially request an extension. I want to say for good cause, but that's very legalistic. I'm trying to think of a more human way of saying that, and that it will produce a schedule of deliverables on or about November 30th that will be provided to the council with a list of both deliverables and forecast dates for delivery.
If that needs a second, I'll gladly second that.
As a bit of clarification in the language, John, my understanding is the executive committee is to assist you. My recommendation would be to task that executive committee with creating that schedule of deliverables and informing not just the entire committee of that and keeping track of that more than just one date in November, but that the executive committee continue to track the deliverables, and targets, and inform the committee as well as staff and city council.
So why don't we add that to the purpose of the executive committee? Because it has a couple of purposes listed in there. So we'll add that the executive committee will develop and track deliverables, develop a list of and track deliverables. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Second that.
Okay, can we get a roll call before my consensus falls apart?
Committee Member Amirian?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Would you just read the entire proposed motion, please? Sorry.
Yeah, I was afraid someone was going to ask that. Okay, so let's do this in points because it is a little sloppy. Point one, our regular meeting dates will be the first and third Mondays of each month. Point two, our expected completion date will be the end of January, not the end of December. Point three, the committee can request an extension of that date it would be a majority of the committee can request an extension of that date to the city council. Point four is we will add to the duties of the executive committee creating a list and schedule of deliverables, and we will I should say list and schedule of deliverables to be provided to the city council and the public. And so the question then is, have I covered everything that we need?
You did.
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
All right. May we have a roll call, please?
Committee Member Amirian?
Yes.
Member Bain?
Yes.
Committee Member Kadekin?
Yes.
Committee Member Nice is not here. Committee Member Manning?
Yes.
Committee Member Macias?
Yes.
Committee Member Michael?
Yes.
Committee Member Milano?
Yes.
Committee Member Nelson?
Yes.
Committee Member Wolfson?
Yes.
Committee Member Finch?
Yes.
Committee Member One?
Yes.
Committee Member Zakarian?
Yes.
Committee Member Paula?
Yes.
And IVEW representative is not here. That concludes roll call.
Okay, excellent. A third unanimous vote. So that the question is, are there other motions?
Mr. Holson, I have a suggestion for a motion with regard to materials and information that the committee members need to have a comprehensive understanding of the issues surrounding the pension situation and its impact on the city. I'm assuming that the city staff provided you with some packets of information for you to get familiarized with our own situation. And perhaps that information could be copied and sent to all the committee members so they have the same information that you have. And I would also suggest additional information from studies done by other independent agencies on work that they have already done and analysis that they've done with regard to pension problems in other parts of California, for example. So by having that information at hand, committee members can study and get a sense of the issues that we are confronting. Some of them are a bit complex, but some of them are not that difficult if we give them the right resources of information for them to make a good analysis. Among those, I would suggest for the Finance Department to provide the main pages of the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. So for example, page 79 of last year's CAFR gives you a one-page summary of the actual obligation. And once members become apprised of these numbers and become comfortable, many of the other issues that we will deal with will become easier to understand. Thank you.
So I want to give this a little thought. What I did in my last Blue Ribbon Task Force is we actually created a kind of a OneDrive repository of information for the committee members, which worked really pretty well. It's public information too. It's not. I mean, none of this is confidential at this point that I'm aware of. So I'd like to. Maybe you want to let me do a little thinking about this between now and the next meeting and come up with a proposal for how to disseminate information and how to collect information. There's going to be, over the course of this, quite a collection of information. I think it'd be helpful for everybody to have it in one place and everybody to be sharing the same information. I realize we could email it to everybody, but then you've just got bunches of emails and it's a kind of a mess. So that'd be my suggestion, but I need to talk obviously to the city about what it's capable of doing and whether there are other problems with that I'm not foreseeing.
Mr. Holtzman.
To hop on and second the idea of having all of the information provided to all of the committee and also be available in that way that you're describing, a OneDrive or cloud or however we can configure it so that it's available publicly as well. Thank you.
And I heard there's a comment from Zara.
Yes, Mr. Holtzman, thank you. This is Zara Mirian. So my understanding is our next meeting would be the first Monday of October, which is this coming Monday. Is that correct?
Ooh. Well, I mean, we actually wouldn't have any shortage of things to do if we went ahead and did that. Bear in mind, what we have already lined up is obviously the election of the executive committee, the Brown Act summary. We're going to need to take input on agenda items, which is actually a fairly major point at this point, this early. And then what I would like, and my thought was that it'd be very helpful, I think, to have the folks from the city give an overview of I understand this is, the committee will have its own views. That's important. I understand that. But I think a good starting place is to understand how the problem is understood by the city. And what documents, et cetera, have been produced and that the city has that speak to these issues. The city, I mean, again, there are going to be different views about whether the city's done enough or too much or et cetera, I'm sure. But I think it would be, we don't want to duplicate somebody else's work. And so it's helpful to start with knowing where, at least in my view, I think that's a good place to start. Now, whether we do that next Monday, I don't know.
I'd like to propose a time limit on the amount of time for presentations of that nature, if we could. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I lost every other word.
A time limit on the presentations.
Oh, okay, sure. I mean, I'm thinking about a half hour here. I'm not thinking about
in total or per person.
Well, I was thinking about
the total
for the city. I wasn't thinking about specifically who would present or how it would be presented. I don't know. I haven't really talked to the city in great detail about it, but it does seem to me that it's important to understand how the problem is understood by the city. So we have a fair amount. I guess the other possibility would be to move the Monday, this first meeting. We could have two meetings in a row. We could move it to a special meeting on, now I'm going to mess up my dates. Instead of having it on the 4th, you could have it on the 11th. This month, we could do the 11th and the 25th, for example, instead of the first, so it'd be the second and fourth Mondays this month because we're off on timing.
Mr. Holtzman.
I don't know that I see much need to push it back, given the tremendous amount of material we have to digest from today's meeting.
Yeah.
And Mr. Holtzman, if I may.
Sure.
You know, I think I agree with Mr. Bain. I think maybe keeping the meeting on Monday, and this might be a discussion that'll come up in the next agenda item, but keeping that meeting on Monday, finishing up the agenda items that we haven't gotten to, giving you the opportunity to think about the issues that were raised.
Yes.
And then that'll offer the committee, I believe, an opportunity to consider what sort of agenda items we'd like to suggest during that, that meeting as well. I think that would be probably the way I would recommend we proceed.
I'm comfortable with that.
And I agree, especially given that the 11th is a holiday.
There's another good point.
So we probably want to avoid a meeting on the 11th.
I have a suggestion for the next meeting to be agendized. Because it is I think that we can make it an educational meeting where we could have the city's finance department give us a overview of how the pension system has fared in the past 20 years. This is not something that they would need to go overboard with regard to preparing it, because they do prepare these reports during the city's budget study sessions. So I'm assuming that they have this information already. It just needs to be polished up so that it could be concise for maybe a 20-minute meeting, a 20-minute presentation on what has transpired in the last 20 years. This will give us an idea of at least an overview.
We have Matthew here. Why don't we ask him whether this is doable?
Members of the committee, that's not particularly, I'm the HR director, not the finance director. So I don't want to speak for Ms. Flynn. She had an engagement this evening at her kids' school. So I would assume that there are such reports available that have been prepared. I don't know if they go back 20 years, but I think I can consult with her and we can see if that's possible, and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can.
Yeah, and maybe John, I don't know if you have a feel for this. I mean, there's so much information you guys have already generated. I mean, it's not. I mean, you've done a lot of thinking about this issue.
We'll have to have an internal discussion first thing in the morning to determine what we do have, what the request actually is, and how quickly we can gather what we don't have. But our goal would be to accommodate this, if at all possible. So I would say let's move ahead with the suggestion, with the goal of hitting that target. If anything changes, you'd be the first to know first thing.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Okay, we're way past our time, I'm aware. I apologize, but obviously we had a lot to cover. But the fact that we're going to have this other meeting is helpful. I will bring back an amended version also of the bylaws. I keep saying that, of the rules of procedure for adoption at that meeting. We'll agendize that as well. Okay. Any further business that has to happen today, or can we wait till next Monday?
Mr. Holtzman?
I would just like to support the making it a priority to review the storage of data in some fashion, because it's going to be critical that we start gathering that and have access to it. We aren't going to make much progress just debating personal opinions. We need some facts to start digging into.
Yeah, that's a very old-fashioned view, but I kind of like it. So, okay.
And Mr. Holtzman, if I may, sorry, Marion, just as a reminder, if that is going to be a regular meeting on Monday, then, the agenda, would have to be kind of expedited for that particular meeting, considering the posting requirements.
Correct.
Absolutely right. The regular meeting. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, we may have to, even though treat that as a regular meeting, we may have to do it as a special meeting if we can't get that information out.
I'd like to move that we adjourn in the interest of making it possible for that to happen.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Committee Member Amirian?
Yes.
Committee Member Bain?
Yes.
Committee Member Kadekin?
Yes.
Committee Member Nice is absent. Committee Member Manning?
Yes.
Committee Member Macias?
Yes.
Committee Member Michael?
Yes.
Committee Member Milano? Committee Member Milano?
Yes.
Committee Member Nelson?
Yes.
Committee Member Wolfson? Committee Member Wolfson?
Here.
You're on mute. Susan?
She made the motion.
Committee Member Finch?
Yes.
Committee Member One?
Yes.
Committee Member Zakarian?
Yes.
Committee Member Paulos?
Yes.
And IBEW representative is absent. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Good work, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.